Ethan Cole had everything: money, power, and empire. But when his dying grandfather demanded he marry a veiled stranger to keep his inheritance, he never expected to freeze at the altar when he heard her voice. The woman hidden beneath that veil had saved his life 5 years ago and vanished without a trace, leaving him haunted by a memory he couldn't forget. But Ava Johnson carried secrets of her own, scars that told a story of survival, an abusive ex about to be released from prison, and a fear that no amount of wealth could erase. As their arranged marriage turned into something dangerously real, a jealous cousin plotted in the shadows, determined to destroy them both and claim the family fortune. What started as a transaction became a battle for love, trust, and redemption. But when her past came knocking with a knife in hand, everything they'd built was seconds away from shattering. This is the story of the bride no one wanted, and the millionaire who'd lose everything to choose her. Subscribe right now and comment where you're watching from, because what happens next will prove that some love stories are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the bedroom, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Ethan Cole stood at the doorway, his hand frozen on the brass handle. He didn't want to go in. He knew what waited for him on the other side: his grandfather's weak smile, the steady beep of monitors, the smell of medicine that had replaced the old man's favorite pipe tobacco. But he went in anyway. He always did. "There's my boy," Henry Cole said from the bed. His voice was thin now, like paper that might tear if you spoke too loud. The man who had once lifted Ethan onto his shoulders and run through the estate gardens was now barely able to lift his own head. Ethan pulled a chair close. "How are you feeling today, Grandpa?" Henry's laugh came out as a wheeze. "Like I'm dying, son, because I am." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's the truth." Henry's pale blue eyes fixed on Ethan with surprising sharpness. "And we need to talk about the truth before I go." Ethan's chest tightened. These conversations never ended well. "If this is about the company again, it's about you." Henry reached out, his hand trembling. Ethan took it gently. "You're 30 years old, Ethan. You've built an empire. You've made more money than I ever dreamed of. But you're alone." "I'm fine." "You're lonely. There's a difference." Henry squeezed his grandson's hand with what little strength he had left. "I won't leave this world until I know you have someone who'll be there when the money doesn't matter anymore." Ethan pulled his hand back. He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the rolling hills of the Charleston countryside. "You want me to get married. I want you to have a chance at happiness. You can't arrange happiness, Grandpa." "No, but I can arrange an opportunity." Henry shifted in the bed, wincing. "I've made provisions. If you marry before I pass, the estate stays yours. All of it. If you don't—" He paused. "It goes to Marcus." The name hit Ethan like cold water. Marcus, his cousin, the man who had spent years trying to climb over everyone in the family to get to the top. "You wouldn't." "I would, because I know it'll force you to do what you've been too scared to do for 5 years. Connect with another human being." Ethan turned around. "This is insane. This is love." Henry's eyes were wet now. "I know you think you don't need anyone. Not since the accident. But son, that night didn't break you, it just made you afraid." "The accident." Ethan's jaw clenched. He hated talking about it. The twisted metal, the flames, the darkness closing in. And then, a voice. A woman's voice, soft and urgent, telling him to hold on. He'd never seen her face. She'd vanished before the ambulance arrived. 5 years later, he still heard that voice in his dreams. "There's a woman," Henry said quietly. "A good woman. She needs help. You need someone. I've arranged everything." "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." Henry closed his eyes. "Trust me, Ethan. One last time. Trust your old grandpa." Ethan stared at the frail man in the bed, the man who had raised him after his parents died, the man who had taught him everything about business, honor, and family. He wanted to say no. He wanted to walk out and never look back. But he couldn't. "Fine," Ethan said, the word bitter on his tongue. "I'll do it." Henry's smile was peaceful. "Good. The ceremony is in 3 days." 300 miles away, Ava Johnson sat on the edge of a worn couch in her friend's apartment, her hands shaking. "You have to do this," Lydia said, pacing back and forth across the small living room. "Ava, please, this is your way out." "I can't marry a stranger." Ava's voice was barely a whisper. She touched her cheek, the left side where the scar tissue was thickest. "Especially not someone like him. Someone rich? Someone who can protect you? Someone who'll pity me." Ava looked up at her friend. Lydia Brown had been her anchor for 3 years now, ever since that night. Ever since Nathaniel had... She couldn't finish the thought. This isn't about pity, Lydia said, sitting down beside her. The lawyer said it's just a marriage of convenience. The old man wants his grandson settled before he dies. You need a safe place to start over. It's perfect. Nothing about this is perfect. Ava stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city stretched in every direction. So many people, so many places to hide. But Nathaniel would find her eventually. He always did. What if he's like... He's not. Lydia's voice was firm. I checked him out. Ethan Cole is a businessman. Quiet. Keeps to himself. He's not a monster, Ava. Ava closed her eyes. The memory of hands around her throat, the smell of whiskey, the moment when the glass ashtray connected with her face, and the world exploded in pain and blood. Nathaniel had said he loved her even as he'd done it. The veil, she said quietly. I'll wear the veil the whole time. I won't take it off. Whatever you need. And if he changes his mind when he sees me, then he's a fool. Lydia came up behind her and put a hand on her shoulder. But he won't. Trust me. Trust. Such a small word. Such an impossible thing. But Ava nodded anyway, because what choice did she have? Nathaniel was getting out on parole in 2 months, and when he got out, he'd come looking. She knew it in her bones. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it. The chapel on the Cole estate was small and beautiful. Soft light poured through stained glass windows, painting the wooden pews in shades of gold and blue. Fresh flowers lined the aisle, white roses and lilies. It should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like a dream where Ava was watching someone else's life unfold. She stood in a side room, staring at herself in the mirror. The wedding dress was simple but elegant, ivory silk that didn't quite fit right in the shoulders. The veil covered her face completely, a thick layer of lace that blurred the world into soft shapes. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. You look beautiful, Lydia said from the doorway. She was the only guest on Ava's side, the only person in the world who knew the whole story. I look like a ghost. You look like a bride. Lydia came over and adjusted the veil. Remember, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. If you want to leave, we leave, okay? Ava nodded, but she knew she wouldn't leave. She needed this. She needed somewhere safe, somewhere Nathaniel couldn't find her. The music started. Soft piano notes drifted through the old building. That's your cue, Lydia whispered. Ava took a breath. Then another. Then she walked toward the chapel doors. The aisle seemed impossibly long. At the end stood a man in a dark suit, tall, broad shoulders, sandy brown hair. He didn't look at her as she approached. His eyes were fixed somewhere above her head, like he was trying to be anywhere but here. When she reached the altar, he finally looked down. Even through the veil, she could see his face. Strong jaw, green eyes that looked tired, sad. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't place it. Maybe she'd seen his picture in a magazine. Rich people were always in magazines. The minister began to speak. The words washed over Ava like water. She tried to focus, but her heart was beating too fast. Her palms were sweaty inside the white gloves. Then it was time for the vows. Do you, Ethan Michael Cole, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was flat, businesslike. And do you, Ava Marie Johnson, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Ava opened her mouth. Her throat was so dry. The word came out cracked and soft. I do. The moment she spoke, Ethan's entire body went rigid. His eyes snapped to her face, or where her face would be under the veil. His mouth opened slightly. His hands, which had been at his sides, came up halfway like he wanted to reach for her, but couldn't remember how. Ethan, the minister said quietly. Are you all right? But Ethan didn't answer. He was staring at Ava like he'd seen a ghost. His chest rose and fell rapidly. A muscle worked in his jaw. That voice, he whispered, so quiet that maybe only Ava heard. It's you. Ava's heart stopped. What did he mean? They'd never met. She would have remembered, wouldn't she? By the power vested in me, the minister continued, clearly uncomfortable, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan didn't move to kiss the bride. He just stood there, frozen, his eyes never leaving the veil. The reception was held in the main hall of the estate. Ava had expected something small, but the room was filled with people. Servants, family members, business associates, all of them looking at her with curiosity and something else, something that felt like judgment. She sat at the head table, her veil still in place. Ethan sat beside her, but he hadn't said a word since the ceremony. He kept glancing at her, then looking away quickly like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Henry Cole was wheeled in by a nurse. The old man's face lit up when he saw them. "There they are." His voice was weak but warm. "My boy and his beautiful bride." He was pushed up to the table. Up close, Ava could see how sick he really was. His skin was almost grey. His hands trembled on the armrests of the wheelchair, but his smile was genuine. "Ava," Henry said, reaching out. She took his hand carefully. "Thank you for giving an old man peace. I can rest now knowing Ethan won't be alone." Tears stung Ava's eyes. This man didn't know her. He didn't know what she'd done, what had been done to her. He just saw someone who could help his grandson. It was more kindness than she'd felt in years. "I'm honored to be here, Mr. Cole," she said softly. Again, Ethan's head snapped toward her at the sound of her voice. His eyes were wide, almost wild. "Grandpa," Henry said, touching her hand. "Call me Grandpa." He looked between her and Ethan. "Now I know this has been quick, unusual, but I need to ask one more thing." He paused, catching his breath. "Let me see your face, dear. Let an old man see the woman who's going to take care of his boy." The room went silent. Ava's hands went to the veil. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The moment when everything would change. When he would see her and realize he'd made a terrible mistake. "You don't have to," Ethan said suddenly. His first words to her. His voice was rough, strained. "Not if you're not ready." She looked at him. Even through the lace, she could see the concern in his eyes. Real concern, not pity. "Not yet. It's okay," she whispered. Her hands shook as she lifted the veil, slowly, inch by inch. The cool air hit her face. The left side always felt different. The skin was tighter there, the nerves damaged. She kept her eyes down, not wanting to see their reactions. Silence. It stretched so long that Ava wanted to pull the veil back down and run, but then Henry spoke. "Beautiful," he said simply. "You're beautiful, child." Ava forced herself to look up. Henry's eyes were kind, accepting, but Ethan had gone completely white. He was staring at the scar that ran from her left temple down to her jaw. His hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were bone white. His breathing was fast and shallow. "It's you," he said again, louder this time. "It's really you." I don't understand," Ava stammered. Ethan stood so abruptly, his chair fell backward. Everyone in the room turned to stare. "Your face, the scar, 5 years ago, the car accident on Highway 17, you were there." The room spun. Ava grabbed the table for support. Highway 17, 5 years ago. The night everything went wrong. She remembered. God help her, she remembered. The crash, the burning car. She'd been driving home from her shift at the nursing home when she'd seen it. A black sedan wrapped around a tree, flames starting to lick up the hood. She'd stopped, pulled the man from the wreckage, held his head in her lap and told him to stay awake, to hold on. Help was coming. And then Nathaniel had called. He was drunk, angry, screaming about where she was and why she wasn't home. She'd had to leave before the ambulance arrived, had to go before Nathaniel got worse. She'd thought about that man every day for 5 years, wondered if he'd survived. And now, "You saved my life," Ethan said. His voice cracked. "I never saw your face, but I heard your voice. I've heard it in my dreams for 5 years." He took a step toward her. "You told me to hold on. You said, 'Help is coming. Just hold on.'" Tears streamed down Ava's face. "I had to leave. I'm sorry. I had to—" "Why?" The word was almost a sob. "Why did you leave?" She couldn't answer. Couldn't tell him about Nathaniel, about the fear, about going home that night to bruises and blood and promises that it would never happen again. "Ethan," Henry said gently, "perhaps we should—" But Henry didn't finish. His hand went to his chest, his face contorted in pain. "Grandpa!" Ethan rushed to his side. The room exploded into motion. Nurses ran forward. Someone called 911. Henry gasped for air, his body rigid in the wheelchair. "I'm okay," he wheezed, but he clearly wasn't. Ava moved without thinking. Years of working in nursing homes kicked in. She knelt beside the wheelchair, checked his pulse, tilted his head back slightly. "Don't try to talk, just breathe, slow and steady." The ambulance arrived within minutes. The paramedics took over, loading Henry onto a stretcher. Ethan climbed into the ambulance with him. Before the doors closed, Henry grabbed Ethan's hand. "Promise me," he gasped. "Both of you live here together, make this real." "Grandpa, don't—" "Promise me." "I promise," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I promise." Then the doors slammed shut, and the ambulance screamed down the driveway. Ava stood in the doorway of the estate, still in her wedding dress, watching the red lights disappear into the distance. Lydia came up beside her and put an arm around her shoulders. "What have I done?" Ava whispered. "You saved him," Lydia said. "Twice, apparently." But Ava wasn't sure. Maybe she'd saved him that night on Highway 17. But tonight felt like the beginning of something she couldn't control, something that might destroy them both. Ethan returned at midnight. The house was dark except for a few lamps in the main living room. Ava sat on the couch, still in her wedding dress. She hadn't been able to bring herself to change. Lydia had gone home hours ago after making Ava promise to call if she needed anything. Now it was just her and the silence. When Ethan walked in, he looked exhausted. His tie was loose, his jacket gone. His hair was messy from running his hands through it. But when he saw her, he stopped. "How is he?" Ava asked. "Stable. The doctors say it was a severe angina attack, but he'll recover, for now." Ethan moved to the bar cart and poured himself a whiskey. He drank it in one swallow, then poured another. "He made me promise again that we'd stay here together." "We don't have to." "Actually, we do." Ethan turned to face her. Rain had started to fall outside, tapping against the tall windows. "The will is very specific. If I want to inherit, I have to be married and living in this house for at least 6 months. If not, Marcus gets everything." "Who's Marcus?" "My cousin. And trust me, you don't want him running this place." Ethan sat in the chair across from her. They stared at each other across the coffee table. "So here we are, strangers, married, living together." "I'm sorry," Ava said, "for all of this." "Don't be." His voice softened. "You saved my life. That's not nothing. Why didn't you ever look for me? I tried for months, but no one knew who you were. The police said there was no record of anyone stopping at the scene before the ambulance arrived. You were a ghost." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Why did you leave?" Ava touched her scar unconsciously. "I had to get home." "In the middle of the night? After witnessing a car accident?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because someone was waiting for me." Her voice was barely audible. "And if I was late, things got bad." Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. "The person who did that to your face?" Ava nodded. "Are they still?" "No. I left him 3 years ago. I'm safe now." But even as she said it, she thought of Nathaniel's parole date, 2 months, 60 days until her past came looking for her. Ethan stood and walked to the window. Rain streaked the glass. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I haven't been close to anyone since the accident. I built my company, I made my money, but I stayed alone." He turned to look at her. "I couldn't forget that voice. Your voice. It was the only thing that kept me conscious until help arrived. And now you're here and I don't know what to do. We could just..." Ava stood too, smoothing her dress. "We could just try to be kind to each other. For 6 months. And then we figure out what comes next." "Kind to each other," Ethan repeated. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "That's a low bar. I've learned to appreciate low bars." They stood in the dim light, 2 broken people brought together by fate and a dying man's wish. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. "There are 2 master bedrooms upstairs," Ethan said. "You can take the one on the east side. It has a better view of the gardens." "Thank you." "And Ava?" He waited until she looked at him. "Thank you for saving my life. I never got to say that 5 years ago, so I'm saying it now." Fresh tears burned her eyes. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They walked upstairs together, their footsteps echoing in the vast house. At the top of the stairs they parted ways. Ethan to the west wing, Ava to the east. She closed the door to her new room and leaned against it. The space was bigger than her entire apartment had been. A 4-poster bed, a sitting area, doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the grounds. It was beautiful, it was safe, and it was hers for the next 6 months. Ava changed out of the wedding dress and into the nightgown Lydia had packed for her. She climbed into the enormous bed and pulled the covers up to her chin. The sheets smelled like lavender and something else, something clean and fresh. She was just starting to drift off when she heard it, a soft knock on her door. "Ava?" Ethan's voice came from the hallway, muffled, hesitant. She got up and went to the door but didn't open it, just pressed her hand against the wood. On the other side she could sense him doing the same. "I never thanked you for saving my life," he said through the door. "Not properly, so thank you for giving me 5 more years. I know this situation isn't what either of us wanted, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're safe." Ava pressed her forehead against the door. Tears rolled down her cheeks, hot and silent. She wanted to open the door, wanted to tell him that she'd thought about him every day. That hearing his voice on the news 3 years ago had been the first moment she'd felt hope after leaving Nathaniel. That maybe, just maybe, this was meant to be. But she didn't. She just stood there, crying quietly in the dark. Eventually, she heard his footsteps retreat down the hall. A door opened and closed. Ava went back to bed, but she didn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to the rain and thinking about the man across the hall, the man whose life she'd saved, the man who was now her husband. And she wondered if maybe, just maybe, he might save her too. Morning came too bright and too soon. Ava woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of birds singing outside. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The wedding, the unveiling, Henry's collapse, Ethan's voice through the door. She got up and showered, using the expensive soaps and shampoos in the marble bathroom. The hot water felt like a luxury. At her old apartment, the water heater had been broken for months. She dressed in jeans and a simple blue sweater, the nicest clothes she owned, and ventured downstairs. The estate was massive. Hallways branched off in every direction. She got lost twice before finding the kitchen. It was enormous, all stainless steel and marble countertops. An older woman in a housekeeper's uniform was making coffee. "Oh!" The woman turned, startled. Then her face softened. "You must be the new Mrs. Cole." "I'm Mrs. Porter. I've been the housekeeper here for 20 years. Please call me Ava." "Welcome, Ava." Mrs. Porter's smile was warm and genuine. "Can I get you some breakfast? There's fresh fruit, pastries, eggs. Whatever you'd like. Just coffee is fine." "Thank you." Mrs. Porter poured a cup and handed it to her. "Mr. Cole is already in his study. He's been up since 5 working." She paused. "He does that when he's upset. Buries himself in work." Ava wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "How is Mr. Henry?" "They're keeping him at the hospital for a few days just to be safe, but he's stable." Mrs. Porter wiped down the counter, though it was already spotless. "Can I ask you something, dear?" "Of course. How did you get that scar?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Ava almost dropped her coffee. I'm sorry." Mrs. Porter held up a hand. "That was rude. It's just, I've worked in this house a long time. I've seen Mr. Ethan at his worst. After the accident, he was so lost. And now you're here and he's different. Even after just one night." She met Ava's eyes. "Whatever happened to you, whatever brought you here, I think maybe it was meant to be." Before Ava could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. But it wasn't Ethan. A man appeared in the doorway, tall, dark-haired, with sharp features and a cold smile. He wore an expensive suit and carried himself like he owned the place. "Well, well," he said, his eyes raking over Ava. "The mysterious bride. I'm Marcus Cole, Ethan's cousin." Mrs. Porter's entire demeanor changed. She became stiff, formal. "Mr. Marcus, I didn't know you'd be visiting. I came to meet my new cousin-in-law." Marcus walked into the kitchen like he belonged there. He stopped a few feet from Ava and studied her face. "Interesting choice, I have to admit. I didn't think my dear cousin would actually go through with Grandpa Henry's little scheme." "It's not a scheme," Ava said quietly. "It's a marriage." "Is it?" Marcus laughed. "Come on, we all know what this is. A dying man's last wish, a transaction. You get security, Ethan gets his inheritance. No one's fooled." "That's enough," Mrs. Porter said sharply. But Marcus ignored her. He leaned against the counter, too close to Ava. "I'll give you credit, though. The veil was a nice touch. Very dramatic. And that scar." He reached out like he was going to touch it. Ava jerked back. Coffee sloshed over the rim of her mug. "Marcus!" Ethan's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. He stood in the doorway, his jaw tight. "What are you doing here?" "Congratulating you, cousin." Marcus straightened, all false charm. "Marriage! How wonderful! How convenient!" "Get out! This is still Grandpa's house. I have every right." "Get out!" Ethan took a step forward. "Now!" For a moment, Marcus looked like he might argue. Then he smiled that cold smile again and held up his hands. "Fine, I'm going. But congratulations, Ethan. I'm sure you'll be very happy." He glanced at Ava one more time. "Both of you." He walked out, his footsteps fading down the hall. Mrs. Porter let out a breath. "I'll go make sure he actually leaves." When they were alone, Ethan turned to Ava. "Are you okay?" She nodded, though her hands were still shaking. "Who was that?" "My cousin. And a snake." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I should have warned you about him. He's been circling this estate like a vulture for years, waiting for Grandpa to die so he can claim it. He seemed to think our marriage is fake. He's going to think a lot of things." Ethan moved to the coffee pot and poured himself a cup. Marcus has never been good at accepting when things don't go his way. We'll need to be careful around him. Ava set her mug down. Her coffee had gone cold anyway. Maybe this was a mistake. What? All of this. The marriage. Me being here. Your cousin is right. It's a transaction, and I'm just making your life more complicated. Ethan set his cup down and turned to face her fully. Do you regret saving my life that night? What? No, of course not. Then don't regret being here now. His green eyes were intense. Yes, this started because of Grandpa's wishes, but you're here, you're safe, and that matters. He paused. To me, it matters. Something in Ava's chest loosened. Just a little, just enough to breathe. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Ethan picked up his coffee again. Now, I have about 6 hours of work to catch up on, but this evening, maybe we could have dinner together. Actually talk? I'd like that. He nodded and walked toward the door. Then he stopped and looked back. And Ava, don't listen to Marcus, you're not a mistake. He seemed to search for the right word. You're the person who saved my life. That makes you pretty damn important in my book. Then he was gone, leaving Ava alone in the kitchen with Mrs. Porter's coffee pot and her own racing thoughts. She touched her scar, feeling the familiar ridge of damaged skin. For the first time in 3 years, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as broken as she'd thought. Maybe she was exactly where she needed to be. The next morning, Ava woke to voices in the hallway. Women's voices. Hushed, but not quite quiet enough. Did you see her face? Poor Mr. Ethan. I heard she trapped him. Some kind of scheme with the old man. She doesn't belong here, you can tell just by looking at her. Ava sat up in bed, her heart sinking. She'd known this was coming, had prepared herself for it, but hearing it was different than imagining it. She got dressed slowly, pulling on a grey cardigan over her shirt like armor. When she finally opened her door, the hallway was empty, but she could feel the judgment lingering in the air like perfume. She made her way downstairs, keeping her head down. In the dining room, breakfast had been laid out on the sideboard, but Ava's stomach was too twisted to eat. There you are, dear. Mrs. Porter appeared in the doorway with a tea tray. I brought you some chamomile. You look like you could use it. I heard them, Ava said quietly. The other staff, talking about me. Mrs. Porter's mouth tightened into a thin line. She set down the tray with more force than necessary. I'll speak to them. It won't help. They're not wrong. They are absolutely wrong. Mrs. Porter poured the tea and pressed the cup into Ava's hands. You listen to me. I've been in this house for 20 years. I've seen gold diggers and social climbers and people who only cared about the coal name. You're not one of them, I can tell. How? Because you're scared. Real opportunists aren't scared. They're confident, entitled. Mrs. Porter sat down across from her. You're scared because you have a good heart. And good hearts always worry about being a burden. Tears pricked Ava's eyes. I don't want to make things harder for him. Then don't let a few gossiping fools drive you away. Mrs. Porter reached across and patted her hand. Give it time. They'll come around. But Ava wasn't so sure. Ethan spent most of the day in his study. Ava could hear him on phone calls, his voice firm and businesslike. She wandered the estate, trying to learn the layout. The place was enormous. 3 floors, 2 wings, a library, a conservatory, and grounds that stretched for acres. She found herself in the library by early afternoon, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with leather-bound books, a stone fireplace, deep leather chairs that looked like they'd been there for 100 years. She was running her fingers along the spines when she heard footsteps. Find anything good? Ethan stood in the doorway, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not. This is your home now, too. He walked over to one of the shelves and pulled down a book. Grandpa used to read to me from this one, Treasure Island. I must have heard it 50 times. Ava smiled despite herself. He sounds like he was a wonderful grandfather. The best. Ethan's expression softened. He raised me after my parents died. Car accident. Drunk driver. He paused. I was 12. I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago. But the pain in his eyes said it still hurt. He put the book back. I visited him at the hospital this morning. He's doing better. Asking about you. About me? He wants to know if you're settling in okay, if I'm taking care of you. Ethan's mouth quirked. I told him we're figuring it out. Are we? He looked at her then. Really looked at her. Not at the scar. Not through her. At her. I think so. I hope so. The moment stretched between them, delicate and new. Then Ethan cleared his throat. I was thinking, would you like to take a walk? The gardens are beautiful this time of day. I'd like that. The gardens were stunning. roses in every color, stone paths that wound between hedges and flower beds, a fountain in the center with water that sparkled in the afternoon sun, and at the far edge a lake that reflected the sky like glass. They walked in silence at first, comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. "Do you garden?" Ethan asked eventually. "No, I've never had space for it." Ava bent to smell a white rose. "But I paint, sometimes, when I can afford supplies." "What do you paint?" "Whatever I see. Flowers, buildings, people's hands." She smiled. "I know that sounds strange." "Not at all. Hands tell stories." They reached the lake. Ava sat on a stone bench near the water's edge. Ethan sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Can I ask you something?" His voice was careful. Ava tensed. "Okay. The person who hurt you, are they still in your life?" "No. I left him 3 years ago." "Did he ever try to find you?" The question made her chest tight. She thought of Nathaniel, of his last words before she'd finally escaped. "You'll never really be free of me." She thought of the parole date circled in red on her calendar back at Lydia's apartment. "He's in prison," she said. "For now." Ethan's jaw clenched. "For how long?" "He gets out in 2 months." "And then?" "I don't know." The admission made her feel weak, vulnerable. "But that's why I agreed to this marriage. I needed somewhere safe, somewhere he couldn't find me." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "He won't get near you. I promise you that." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can." He turned to face her. "Ava, I know we barely know each other. I know this whole situation is strange, but I meant what I said yesterday. You saved my life. The least I can do is make sure you're safe." Something in his voice, the certainty, the conviction, made Ava want to believe him, made her want to trust that maybe, just maybe, she could stop running. "Thank you," she whispered. They sat by the lake until the sun started to set, painting the water gold and orange. And for the first time in years, Ava felt something she'd almost forgotten: peace. Dinner that night was served in the smaller dining room. Just the two of them at a table meant for 12. Candles flickered between them. Mrs. Porter had outdone herself. Roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. "This is too much," Ava said, staring at the spread. "Mrs. Porter likes to feed people." Ethan poured wine into both their glasses. "It's her love language." They ate slowly, making small talk. What movies they liked. What music they listened to. Simple things, normal things. It felt almost like a real date. "Can I ask you something now?" Ava said as they finished dessert. "Fair's fair. The accident. Do you remember much about it?" Ethan set down his fork. "Pieces. I remember the tree coming at me, the sound of metal crunching, the smell of gasoline." He paused. "And then your voice, telling me to stay awake. That help was coming. I was terrified you'd die before they got there. I probably would have if you hadn't stopped." His eyes met hers across the candles. "Why did you?" "Stop, I mean. Most people would have just called 911 and kept driving." Ava thought about that night, about how she'd been running late, about how Nathaniel would be furious, about how stopping could have made everything so much worse. "I'm a nurse's aide," she said simply. "I couldn't just drive past someone who needed help." "Even though it cost you?" She touched her scar without thinking. "Even though?" Ethan reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. "He hurt you that night." "Didn't he? When you got home late?" Ava nodded. She couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "I'm so sorry that helping me led to—" "Don't." She pulled her hand back. "Don't apologize for surviving. That's not your fault. None of it is your fault." But the guilt in his eyes said he didn't quite believe her. Over the next week they fell into a routine. Ethan worked during the day. Ava explored the estate, painted in the conservatory, helped Mrs. Porter in the kitchen, even though she insisted it wasn't necessary. They had dinner together every evening, talking more easily each time. Slowly, the walls between them started to crack. One afternoon, Ava was in the conservatory, painting water lilies from the lake when Ethan appeared in the doorway. "Don't stop," he said when she started to put down her brush. "I just wanted to watch, if that's okay." It should have made her nervous. Instead, it felt natural. She kept painting while he sat in one of the wicker chairs, laptop open but largely ignored. "You're good," he said after a while. "Really good. It's just a hobby." "It's more than that. You have real talent." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. "My mother painted before she died. She's the one who taught me." "How old were you?" 15. Cancer. Ava added detail to a petal. After that, it was just me and a series of foster homes, none of them great. Is that how you met? He stopped himself. Nathaniel. Yes, he was a counselor at one of the group homes. Seemed nice at first. Protective. I was 18 when I aged out of the system. Nowhere to go. He offered me a place to stay. She set down the brush. Her hands were shaking. By the time I realized what he really was, I was trapped. Ethan closed his laptop. How did you get out? A neighbor heard him hitting me one night. Called the police. They arrested him for assault. Her voice was flat now, mechanical. I moved in with Lydia, changed my name, tried to disappear. But he found you. He always finds me. The fear was back, cold and sharp in her chest. That's why I can't... She couldn't finish the sentence. Ethan stood and crossed to her. Slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. He knelt beside her chair so they were eye level. Look at me, he said softly. She did. He's not going to find you here. This place is secure, gated, staff, security cameras. And even if he somehow did, his eyes were fierce, he'd have to go through me first. You don't know what he's like. I know what you're like. Strong, brave, a survivor. He reached up and gently touched her scar. She flinched but didn't pull away. These don't make you weak. They make you a warrior. A tear rolled down her cheek, then another. Then she was crying in earnest. Great, heaving sobs that she'd been holding back for years. And Ethan did something she hadn't expected. He pulled her into his arms and held her while she fell apart. The letter arrived 3 days later. Marcus intercepted it. He was at the estate under the pretense of checking on some family business documents. Mrs. Porter didn't trust him. She'd made that clear. But she couldn't exactly stop a Cole family member from entering. He found the letter on the mail table in the foyer. Plain envelope. Return address from Lydia Brown. Addressed to Ava Johnson Cole. Marcus took it to his car before opening it. The letter was short, handwritten, desperate. Ava, I don't want to scare you, but I thought you should know. Nathaniel's parole hearing got moved up. He's being released next week. Not in 2 months. I tried calling, but your new phone number isn't working. Please be careful. He's been asking about you. I didn't tell him anything, but you know how he is. He won't stop looking. Call me when you get this. Lydia. Marcus read it twice. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. This was perfect, better than he could have hoped for. The scarred bride with the violent ex-convict. This would destroy Ethan's reputation, force him to annul the marriage, leave the inheritance wide open. He just had to be patient, wait for the right moment to use it. Marcus smiled as he drove away from the estate. Things were finally going his way. That evening, Ethan found Ava in the garden. She was sitting on their bench by the lake watching the sunset. Hey, he said, sitting beside her, closer than before, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Hey, you seemed distracted at dinner. Everything okay? She wanted to tell him about the letter she should have received, about Nathaniel's parole, about the fear that never quite left her, but she'd been carrying her own weight for so long. The thought of burdening someone else felt impossible. Just tired, she lied. Ethan studied her face. She could tell he didn't quite believe her, but he didn't push. Instead, he said, I have something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Not a ring box, larger, square. What is this? Open it. Inside was a key. Brass, old-fashioned, beautiful. It's the key to the art studio, Ethan said. It's in the east wing, 3rd floor. Grandpa's wife used to paint there. It's been locked up since she died, but I thought... He cleared his throat. I thought you might like a real space. To paint. Your own space. Ava stared at the key, her vision blurred with tears. I can't accept this. Why not? It's too much. It's a room I'm not using. And you're my wife, he said the last word carefully, testing it. You should have a space that's yours. Ethan, please, let me do this for you. She closed her fingers around the key. It was warm from his pocket. Thank you. They sat in silence as the sky turned from orange to purple to deep blue. Stars began to appear one by one. Can I tell you something? Ethan said quietly. Anything. I haven't felt this present in 5 years. Since the accident, I've been going through the motions, building the company, making money, but I haven't actually been living. He turned to look at her. You being here, it's waking something up in me. Something I thought died in that car. Ava's heart hammered. I feel it too. Yeah, she smiled. A real smile. It's terrifying. He laughed. The sound was warm and genuine. Terrifying. That's a good word for it. Their eyes met, held. The space between them felt electric. Ethan leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she didn't. She met him halfway. The kiss was soft, gentle, a question and an answer at the same time. His hand came up to cup her face, careful of the scar. Her fingers tangled in his shirt. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I've wanted to do that for days," Ethan admitted. "Me too." They kissed again, longer this time, deeper. Years of loneliness and fear melting away in the warmth of connection. When they finally walked back to the house hand in hand, Ava felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, but hope was a fragile thing. The next morning, Ava woke to her phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number. "I know where you are." Her blood turned to ice. She knew that cadence, those words. Nathaniel. Her hands shook as she typed back, "Leave me alone." The response was immediate. "You belong to me. You'll always belong to me. No rich husband can change that." Ava dropped the phone like it had burned her. How did he know? How had he found her? She thought about telling Ethan, but what would she say? That her past was catching up, that she'd put him in danger by being here. No, she couldn't do that to him. Not when he'd just started living again. She deleted the texts and tried to forget them. But that night more came. "I saw your picture in the paper, Mrs. Cole. How fancy. You can't hide behind money. I'm coming for you." Ava didn't sleep. She sat by the window in her room, watching the driveway, jumping at every sound. When morning came, she looked like a ghost. "Ava?" Ethan found her in the kitchen, staring into a cold cup of coffee. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're shaking." Before she could answer, Mrs. Porter rushed in. "Mr. Ethan, you need to see this." She held out a tablet. On the screen was a news article. The headline made Ava's stomach drop. "Millionaire's mystery bride, charity case or con artist." Below was a photo of Ava from the wedding. Someone had taken it through a window. Her veil was partially lifted, her scar visible. The article was vicious, calling her a gold digger, questioning her motives, implying the whole marriage was a scheme. Who would do this? Ethan's voice was dangerous, but Ava knew. She could see Marcus's fingerprints all over it. "I should leave," she said quietly. "What? No. I'm ruining your reputation, your family's name, everything your grandfather wanted. I don't care about any of that." Ethan grabbed her hands. "Ava, look at me. I don't care. You should." "Well, I don't." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my publicist. We're doing an interview today, and I'm going to tell them the truth." "What truth?" "That you're the bravest person I've ever known. That you saved my life, and that anyone who has a problem with you can answer to me." The interview aired that evening. Ethan sat in the estate's library, cameras rolling, and defended Ava with a fierce passion that made her cry watching from the other room. "My wife is a hero," he said, looking directly into the camera. "She stopped at a car accident 5 years ago and pulled me from a burning vehicle. She saved my life without asking for anything in return. And yes, our marriage began as an arrangement, but I can tell you right now, there's no one else I'd rather have by my side." The interviewer pressed him on the charity case angle. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Anyone who calls her that is a coward. She's a survivor, she's strong, and I'm honored to be married to her." When the interview ended, Ava found him in the library. The crew was packing up. He looked exhausted. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "Because it's true. You barely know me." "I know enough." He stood and crossed to her. "I know you risked your life to save mine. I know you left an abuser and rebuilt yourself from nothing. I know you're kind to Mrs. Porter and patient with my walls and brave enough to be here despite being terrified." He took her hands. "That's enough." Ava threw her arms around his neck. He caught her, holding tight. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. "Always." But Marcus wasn't done. That night, while Ethan and Ava slept in their separate rooms, he let himself into the estate with a key he'd copied years ago. He moved silently through the halls to Ava's room. The door was unlocked. Stupid. Trusting. He slipped inside and found her purse on the dresser. Inside was her wallet, and in the wallet were medical records from the hospital where she'd been treated after Nathaniel's attack. Marcus photographed everything, the reports, the pictures of her injuries, the police statements. He twisted the narrative in his mind as he worked, how he'd paint her as damaged goods, how he'd make Ethan look like a fool for defending her. He was so focused that he didn't hear the footsteps in the hall. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Porter stood in the doorway, her face pale with shock. Marcus straightened quickly, pocketing his phone. "I was just checking on my cousin's wife, making sure she had everything she needed." "At midnight? In her bedroom? Without permission?" I'm family, I don't need permission. Get out now, or I'm calling the police. Marcus smiled that cold smile. You won't do that. Not to a Cole. Try me. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Marcus shrugged and walked past her. Give my regards to the happy couple. Mrs. Porter locked the door after he left. Then she sat in the hall outside Ava's room, keeping guard until morning. 2 days later, the photos leaked. They were everywhere. Tabloids, social media, gossip sites, pictures of Ava's medical records, her injuries, the police reports detailing Nathaniel's abuse, all of it twisted to make it look like she'd planned everything, like she'd orchestrated her own rescue of Ethan years ago as some kind of long con. It was vicious, cruel, and completely fabricated, but people believed it anyway. The staff whispered more openly now. Reporters camped outside the estate gates. Ava's phone exploded with hate messages from strangers. She read them all, every single one. Gold digger, fake, con artist. You don't deserve him. And the worst part? A small voice in her head agreed with them. That night, she sat at the desk in her room and wrote a letter. Ethan, I'm sorry I can't do this anymore. You deserve peace, not scandal. You deserve someone who brings light into your life, not darkness. Thank you for everything, for defending me, for seeing me as more than my scars, for making me feel safe, even if it was only for a little while. But I can't let you destroy everything you've built because of me. Your reputation, your family's name, your future, it's all more important than whatever this is between us. Please don't look for me, please just let me go. I'm sorry I couldn't be the wife you needed, but maybe I was the one you needed to help you start living again. That's enough. Ava. She left the letter on her pillow. Then she packed a small bag, took the money she'd saved, and walked out of the estate just before dawn. The guard at the gate was asleep. She slipped past easily. By the time the sun rose, she was gone, and Ethan woke to an empty house and a heart that felt like it had been ripped from his chest all over again. Ethan woke at 6, like always. He showered, dressed, and went downstairs expecting to find Ava in the kitchen or the conservatory. She'd become an early riser too, probably because she couldn't sleep through the night. He'd heard her sometimes pacing in her room when the nightmares came, but the kitchen was empty, the conservatory too. He checked the library, the garden, the art studio he'd given her. Nothing. A cold feeling crept into his chest. He took the stairs 2 at a time back to her room and knocked. Ava. Silence. He opened the door. The bed was made, the closet mostly empty, and on the pillow a folded piece of paper. His hands shook as he read it. By the time he finished, he was sitting on the edge of her bed, the letter crumpled in his fist. She'd left. She'd actually left. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Mrs. Porter found him there 20 minutes later. Mr. Ethan, I heard. Oh no. She saw the empty room, the letter, the look on his face. She left. She thinks she's protecting me. His voice was hollow. She thinks I'm better off without her. What are you going to do? Ethan stood, his jaw was set, his eyes hard. I'm going to find her and then I'm going to show her exactly how wrong she is. But finding Ava wasn't simple. She'd turned off her phone, wasn't at Lydia's apartment. He checked 3 times, had paid cash for everything so there was no credit card trail. She'd vanished, just like she had 5 years ago after the accident. And Ethan felt the same helpless rage he'd felt then, knowing someone had saved him, knowing he owed them everything, and not being able to find them. He hired private investigators, checked hospitals and shelters, called every nursing home and care facility within 200 miles. Nothing. 3 days after she left, Mrs. Porter found him in his study, staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. Mr. Ethan, she said gently, there's something you should know. She handed him his phone. On the screen was a text from the hospital. His grandfather had passed away in the night, peacefully, in his sleep. Ethan read it twice. Then he set the phone down very carefully. He's gone, he said. Not a question, a statement of fact. I'm so sorry. Ethan nodded. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the gardens were in full bloom. Grandpa Henry had loved those gardens. He died thinking I was happy, Ethan said, thinking I'd found someone. You did find someone, and I lost her. Then find her again. Mrs. Porter came to stand beside him. Mr. Henry's funeral is in 3 days. The will reading is the day after. But after that, you go find that girl and you bring her home. The funeral was small, just family and close friends. Ethan stood at the graveside in a black suit, staring at the mahogany casket, and felt nothing. Numbness had settled over him like a blanket. Marcus stood on the other side of the grave. He had the decency to look somber, but there was something else in his eyes, something that looked like satisfaction. After the service, they gathered at the estate for the will reading. The lawyer was an older man named Mr. Patterson, who'd worked with the Cole family for 40 years. "Henry Cole's last will and testament," he began, opening a thick folder. "Written and notarized 3 months ago." Ethan listened with half an ear. He didn't care about money, didn't care about the estate. All he cared about was finding Ava. "To my grandson, Ethan Cole," Mr. Patterson read, "I leave my love and my hope that he has found happiness. However, as the terms of the inheritance required marriage and cohabitation for 6 months, and as Mrs. Cole has left the residence before this term was fulfilled—" "Wait," Ethan sat up straight. "What?" "The inheritance clause is void. Therefore, the estate, including all properties, investments, and assets, passes to Marcus Cole." Marcus tried to look surprised. He failed. The smile that crept across his face was pure triumph. "This is wrong," Ethan said, standing. "Grandpa wouldn't—" "I'm sorry, Mr. Cole, but the will is very clear. The terms were not met." Mr. Patterson closed the folder. "Mr. Marcus Cole is now the legal owner of the Cole estate and all associated holdings." Ethan looked at his cousin, at the man who'd leaked Ava's story, who'd driven her away, who'd been circling like a vulture for years, and Ethan realized something. He didn't care. "Congratulations, Marcus," he said. His voice was calm, even. "I hope it was worth it." "Worth what?" Marcus's smile faltered. "Destroying an innocent woman's life, forging documents, breaking into her room. All for this." Ethan gestured at the estate. "A house, some money, things that don't actually matter." "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about." Ethan picked up his jacket. "Enjoy the estate. I hope it keeps you warm at night. Because it's all you're ever going to have." He walked out. Mrs. Porter followed. "Where will you go?" she asked. "To find my wife." Lydia finally broke on the 4th visit. "Fine," she said, opening her apartment door all the way. "But if you hurt her, I'll make you regret it, rich or not." "Deal." Lydia sat on her couch and sighed. "She made me promise not to tell you. Please." "She's in Edisto Beach, working at a little art shop on the main street. She's using the name Ava Johnson again." "Not Cole." Lydia's eyes were fierce. "She thinks she's protecting you. That's the only reason she left." "I know." "Do you?" "Because she loves you. She didn't say it, but I could tell. And she left anyway, because she thought you'd be better off." The words hit Ethan like a punch. "She loves you." He'd suspected, hoped, but hearing it confirmed made everything clearer. "I love her too," he said. The admission felt right, true. "I'm going to tell her that." "Good." Lydia stood. "Now go get her before she does something stupid like disappear for good." Edisto Beach was a small coastal town, 2 hours south of Charleston. The main street was lined with surf shops and restaurants and little stores selling beach gear. At the far end was a place called Coastal Canvas. Ethan parked and sat in his car for a moment, trying to figure out what to say. How do you tell someone they're wrong about not deserving love? How do you convince them to take a chance? He didn't have answers, so he just got out and walked inside. The shop was small and bright. Paintings covered every wall. Seascapes, pelicans, marsh grasses. And behind the counter, wearing a paint-stained apron, was Ava. She looked up when the bell chimed. When she saw him, all the color drained from her face. "Ethan." "Hi." They stared at each other across the shop. A customer browsing paintings glanced between them, sensing the tension, and quickly left. "You shouldn't be here," Ava said. "Probably not, but here I am anyway." She came around the counter. She looked thinner, tired. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "How did you find me?" "Lydia. After I promised not to hurt you." He took a step closer. "Grandpa died." Ava's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, God. Ethan, I'm so sorry." "Marcus got everything. The estate, the money, all of it. Because of me. Because I left." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be." Another step. "I don't care about the estate. I never did. The only thing I care about walked out on me 4 days ago." "You have to care. That was your home. Your family's legacy." "It's just a house, Ava. Bricks and wood and history that doesn't matter without someone to share it with." He was close enough now to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. "You thought you were protecting me, but you broke my heart instead." A sob escaped her. "I had to. Don't you see I'm ruining your life? The scandal, the reporters, people thinking you married some damaged—" "Stop." His voice was sharp. "Don't you dare call yourself damaged." "But I am. Look at me." She gestured to her face, to the scar. "I'm broken, used." I come with an abusive ex and trauma and baggage you don't deserve to carry. Then let me carry it anyway. Why? The word came out as a wail. Why would you want this, want me? Because I love you. The words hung in the air between them. Simple, true, undeniable. Ava stared at him. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. Ethan cupped her face gently. His thumb traced the edge of her scar. I love you, Ava. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you paint water lilies. I love how you make me feel alive for the first time in 5 years. I love that you saved my life twice, once on a highway and once when you walked into that chapel. His voice cracked. I love you, all of you, scars and trauma and baggage included. Ethan, you don't have to say it back. I know this is fast. I know we're still figuring things out, but I needed you to know, I needed you to understand that leaving didn't protect me. It destroyed me. Tears streamed down Ava's face. She opened her mouth to respond. That's when the door chimed again. Well, isn't this sweet? Ava went rigid. Ethan felt her terror before he even turned around. A man stood in the doorway, tall, muscular, with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. He wore jeans and a leather jacket, and his hands were clenched into fists. Hello, baby, Nathaniel said, his voice like poison. Miss me? Everything happened very fast. Nathaniel moved toward Ava. Ethan stepped between them. Don't! Who the hell are you? Her husband. Nathaniel laughed. It was an ugly sound. Husband. That's cute. Did she tell you about us? About how she belongs to me? She doesn't belong to anyone. Wrong. Nathaniel pulled something from his jacket. A knife. Small, but sharp. She's mine. Always has been. Always will be. Ethan's heart pounded, but he didn't move. Put the knife down. Or what? You gonna buy me off? That's what rich boys do, right? Throw money at problems? Behind Ethan, Ava was fumbling for her phone, calling 911. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely dial. Now you're scared of her, Ethan said suddenly. The realization hit him. That's why you hurt her, because she's stronger than you, braver, and it terrifies you. Shut up. She left you, rebuilt her life, found happiness, and you can't stand it because it means you never had any real power over her. I said, shut up. Nathaniel lunged. Ethan moved on instinct. He'd taken self-defense classes after the accident, knew how to deflect, how to redirect force. He grabbed Nathaniel's wrist, twisted, and the knife clattered to the floor. But Nathaniel was bigger, stronger. He threw a punch that connected with Ethan's jaw, sending him sprawling. Then he went for Ava. She scrambled backward, knocking over an easel. Paint scattered across the floor. Nathaniel grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You're coming with me, he snarled. No! The word was clear, firm. Ava's voice didn't shake. I'm not. She brought her knee up hard. Nathaniel doubled over with a grunt. Ethan surged up and tackled him from behind. They went down in a tangle of limbs, crashing into a display of paintings. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Nathaniel struggled to his feet, breathing hard. Blood trickled from his nose. He looked at Ava with such hatred that it was almost physical. This isn't over, he spat. Yes, Ethan said, standing between them again. It is. The police burst through the door. 2 officers, guns drawn. They took in the scene. The knife on the floor, Nathaniel's bloody nose, Ava's terrified face. He attacked us, Ethan said. His voice was steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through him. There's a restraining order. He violated parole. The officers moved fast. Nathaniel fought as they handcuffed him, screaming obscenities, promising revenge, swearing he'd come back. But Ava didn't flinch. She stood tall, one hand in Ethan's, and watched as they dragged her nightmare away. When the door closed behind them, she collapsed. Ethan caught her, held her as she sobbed into his chest. Great, wrenching cries that seemed to come from her very soul. It's over, he whispered into her hair. He's gone. He can't hurt you anymore. He said he'd always find me. He was wrong. You're safe now, I promise you're safe. She clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. And Ethan held her, whispering reassurances, until the shaking stopped and her breathing evened out. They gave statements to the police. Nathaniel had violated parole by leaving the state and by approaching Ava despite the restraining order. Combined with the assault and the weapon, he was looking at serious prison time. He won't be bothering you again, the officer said as they finished the paperwork. Ava nodded. She looked exhausted, wrung out. The shop owner, a kind older woman who'd witnessed the whole thing, insisted they close up for the day. You take care of each other, she said, patting Ava's hand. "And honey, you were so brave." Ethan drove Ava to a small motel near the beach. She didn't protest, didn't ask where they were going, just sat in the passenger seat staring out the window at the ocean. In the room, she finally spoke. "You could have been killed, but I wasn't. He had a knife, Ethan. He could have—" Her voice broke. "He didn't." Ethan sat beside her on the bed. "And now he's going back to prison where he belongs. Why did you come here? After everything, after I left, after you lost the estate. Why did you come?" "Because I meant what I said in that shop. I love you." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too. God help me, I do, but no buts. Just love me. Let me love you. That's all we need." "What about the estate? Your inheritance, your grandfather's legacy?" Ethan smiled. It was soft, genuine. "Want to know a secret? I called a press conference for tomorrow morning. I'm going to tell everyone the truth about Marcus, about the forged documents, the photos he stole, everything he did to drive you away." "What?" "And I'm going to publicly renounce my claim to the inheritance. Tell the world that I'd rather be poor with you than rich without you." Ava gaped at him. "You can't do that. Watch me." He took her hands. "Ava, that estate was never home. Not really. Home is wherever you are. If that's a tiny apartment or this motel or a beach house we buy together, I don't care, as long as I'm with you. You're insane. Probably." He grinned. "But you love me anyway." She laughed through her tears. "I do. I really, really do." "Then come back with me. Not to the estate. That's Marcus's problem now. But come back to Charleston. We'll find a place. Start over. Together." "Together," she repeated, like she was testing the word, tasting its shape. "Together," he confirmed. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And for the first time in her life, Ava believed that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be happy. The press conference was brutal. Ethan stood in front of cameras and reporters and told them everything about Marcus breaking into Ava's room, about the forged documents, about the cruel campaign to destroy her reputation. "My cousin wanted the estate so badly, he was willing to ruin an innocent woman's life," Ethan said, looking directly into the camera. "Well, he got what he wanted. The estate is his, but he can keep it, because I have something far more valuable." He pulled out his phone and held up a photo. It was of Ava, taken the morning after the police had arrested Nathaniel. She was sitting on the motel balcony, watching the sunrise, and there was peace on her face. "I have her," Ethan said simply, "and that's worth more than any inheritance." The reporters exploded with questions. Ethan answered them calmly, methodically. Yes, Marcus had acted alone. No, he wouldn't be pressing charges. He just wanted the truth known. Yes, his marriage was real, very real. "Mr. Cole," one reporter called out, "are you saying you're giving up millions of dollars for a woman you've known for less than a month?" Ethan smiled. "I'm saying I'm choosing love over money. And if you think that's crazy, then you've never really been in love." The video went viral within hours. People who'd been cruel about Ava suddenly changed their tune. Others criticized Marcus. The tide of public opinion shifted dramatically, but Ethan didn't care about any of that. He only cared about the woman waiting for him back at the motel. They stayed in Edisto Beach for a week, walking on the beach, talking for hours, learning each other in the way couples do when they're not performing for anyone else. Ava painted. Ethan worked remotely. They ate seafood and watched sunsets and made love slowly, carefully, like they had all the time in the world. On their last night, Ethan took her to a small restaurant on the pier. "I have something to ask you," he said over dessert. Ava raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" "Maybe." He reached across the table and took her hand. "We got married because of my grandfather's wish, because of circumstances, but I want to do it again, the right way. Will you marry me, Ava, for real this time? Not because of an inheritance or an arrangement, but because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Ava's eyes filled with tears. "We're already married." "Legally, yes, but I want to marry you because I choose you, because every day I'll keep choosing you." He squeezed her hand. "So what do you say?" "Yes." She laughed through her tears. "Yes, you ridiculous man, I'll marry you, again." They drove back to Charleston on a Sunday morning. The sun was bright, the road was clear, and for the first time in years, Ava felt like she was going towards something instead of running away from something. Ethan had rented a small house in the historic district while they figured out their next steps. It wasn't grand like the estate. Just 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a back porch that overlooked a garden that had gone wild with roses. "It's perfect," Ava said when she saw it. "It's small. It's ours." She turned to him and smiled. "That makes it perfect." They moved in with almost nothing. Ethan had taken only personal items from the estate, photos of his grandfather, some books, clothes. Ava had even less. But somehow, the emptiness felt like possibility. Mrs. Porter showed up the next day with casseroles and curtains, and a fierce hug for both of them. "I quit," she announced. "Told Mr. Marcus exactly what I thought of him and his schemes. Then I walked out." She set down a box of kitchen supplies. "So, if you need a housekeeper, I'm available. Though I should warn you, I come with opinions and I'm not afraid to share them." Ethan laughed. "You're hired, if you want to be. I want to be exactly where I'm needed, and you two need me." She looked around the small house with approval. "This place has good bones. We'll make it a home." And she was right. Over the next week, the house transformed. Ava painted the walls soft colors, pale blue in the living room, warm yellow in the kitchen. They bought furniture from thrift stores and antique shops. Ethan set up an office in the spare bedroom. Ava claimed the back porch as her painting space. Lydia visited constantly, bringing food and laughter and stories that made Ava cry with happiness. "This is what you deserve," she said one evening, watching Ethan and Ava cook dinner together. "This right here. Peace. Love. A man who looks at you like you hung the moon." "He does, doesn't he?" Ava said softly. "He really does." But healing wasn't linear. There were hard days. Days when Ava woke from nightmares about Nathaniel. Days when she couldn't stop checking the locks on the doors. Days when the scar on her face felt like a brand that marked her as broken. Ethan learned to recognize those days. He'd find her sitting on the back porch, staring at nothing, and he'd just sit beside her, not talking, not demanding, just being there. "I'm sorry," she said one morning after a particularly bad night. "For what?" "For being difficult, for having bad days." "Ava," he turned to face her, "you survived something terrible. You're allowed to have bad days. You're allowed to heal at your own pace. I'm not going anywhere. What if I'm always like this? What if I never fully get over it? Then I'll love you anyway, through the bad days and the good days and every day in between." She leaned against him. His arm came around her shoulders. They sat like that as the sun rose higher, painting the garden gold. 3 weeks after they moved in, Ethan came home with news. "I've been talking to some people," he said over dinner, "about starting a foundation for survivors of domestic violence to help them rebuild their lives. Housing, job training, counseling, all of it." Ava set down her fork. "That's incredible. I want you to help run it, if you want to." He reached across the table. "You know what survivors need. You've lived it. Your voice matters. I don't know anything about running a foundation." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." He smiled. "We're pretty good at that. Figuring things out together." She thought about it, about using her pain for something good, about helping women who were where she'd been, scared, alone, thinking they'd never escape. "Okay," she said, "let's do it." The Cole Foundation for Survivors launched 2 months later. It wasn't huge, wasn't flashy, but it was real, and it helped people. Ava found purpose in the work. She met with survivors, shared her story, showed them her scar and said, "This doesn't define me. What defines me is that I survived, that I chose to live. You can too." And women listened, women believed, women started to heal. Ethan watched her bloom into this work and fell in love with her all over again. She was strong, compassionate, a warrior in the truest sense. The second wedding was planned for a Saturday in October. Small, intimate, just the people they loved. They held it in the garden behind their house. Lydia and Mrs. Porter spent days stringing lights and planting flowers. The local bakery made a simple cake. A friend played guitar. The guest list was short. Lydia, Mrs. Porter, a few friends from the foundation, Ava's old co-workers from the nursing home, some of Ethan's business associates who'd stood by him when the scandal broke. No family. Ethan's parents were gone, his grandfather too, and Marcus, well, they didn't talk about Marcus. The morning of the wedding, Ava stood in front of the mirror in their bedroom. She wore a simple white dress. Nothing fancy. Just soft fabric that moved when she walked. No veil this time. She stared at her reflection, at the scar that ran down her face. For years she'd hidden it, been ashamed of it, seen it as proof of her brokenness. But now, when she looked at it, she saw something different. She saw survival, strength, a reminder that she'd walked through fire and come out the other side. "You ready?" Lydia appeared in the doorway wearing a pale pink dress. Yeah, Ava smiled. I really am. The ceremony started at sunset. Golden light filtered through the trees. The small crowd gathered on folding chairs, and at the end of the aisle, if you could call the garden path an aisle, stood Ethan. He wore a simple suit. His hair was slightly messy because he'd been running his hands through it all day, and when he saw Ava, his face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. She walked toward him slowly. No one gave her away. She walked on her own, because that's what this was about. Choosing. Standing on her own 2 feet and choosing this man, this life, this love. When she reached him, he took her hands. Hi, he whispered. Hi, she whispered back. The officiant, a kind woman who ran a local community center, began to speak, but Ava barely heard the words. She was too focused on Ethan, on his eyes, on the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Then it was time for vows. Ethan went first. He cleared his throat, pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote this down because I knew I'd forget if I didn't. He unfolded it with shaking hands. Ava, 5 years ago, you saved my life. You pulled me from a burning car and told me to hold on. I didn't know your name. I didn't see your face, but I heard your voice, and I never forgot it. He paused, looked up from the paper to meet her eyes. 3 months ago, I heard that voice again, and I realized that you'd been saving me all along, just by existing, just by being brave enough to survive, just by being you. His voice cracked. I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how loved you are, how seen you are, how worthy you are. I promise to be your safe place, your partner, your home. He folded the paper. I promise to choose you every single day for the rest of our lives. Ava was crying. She didn't even try to stop. Your turn, the officiant said gently. Ava took a breath. She hadn't written anything down, hadn't prepared, but the words came anyway. Ethan, for most of my life I felt invisible, like I didn't matter, like I was something to be used and thrown away. She squeezed his hands. You changed that. You saw me, really saw me. Not the scar, not the broken past, not the damage. You saw me. Tears streamed down her face. You made me believe I was worth saving, worth choosing, worth loving. She smiled through the tears. I promise to love you with everything I have. I promise to be brave, to trust, to let you in even when I'm scared. I promise to build a life with you that's full of light and hope and second chances. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You saved me too. In every way a person can be saved. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again. For real this time. Ethan pulled Ava close and kissed her. Soft at first, then deeper. The small crowd cheered. Music started playing. And Ava felt something she'd never felt before. Complete. Whole. Home. The reception was simple. Folding tables with checkered cloths, string lights overhead, food that Mrs. Porter had cooked with love, and dancing on the grass as the stars came out. Ethan held Ava close as they swayed to slow music. Happy? He murmured against her hair. So happy I could burst. Please don't burst. I just married you. I'd like to keep you around. She laughed. The sound was pure joy. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. They danced until their feet hurt. Then they sat on the back porch with Lydia and Mrs. Porter, eating cake and telling stories, the kind of stories that made them laugh until they couldn't breathe. To new beginnings, Lydia said, raising her glass. To family, Mrs. Porter added. To love, Ethan said, looking at Ava. To being chosen, Ava whispered. They clinked glasses, and under the stars, in their tiny garden, they celebrated not just a wedding, but a second chance, a new life, a love that had healed them both. The months that followed were full and rich. The foundation grew. They helped 20 women find safe housing, 30 more got job training, 50 signed up for counseling. The work was hard, sometimes heartbreaking, but always meaningful. Ava's painting took off too. A local gallery featured her work. People responded to the raw emotion in her pieces, the pain and the hope mixed together. She sold 3 paintings in the first month, then 10. Then she couldn't keep up with demand. You're talented, Ethan said one evening, watching her work. I'm healing, she corrected. The painting just shows it. Ethan's business stabilized. He'd lost the estate, but he'd kept his company, kept the clients who valued his integrity over his family name. He downsized, simplified, focused on work that mattered, and he came home every night to Ava, to their small house with the wild garden, to laughter and love and peace. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments when the past reached out with sharp claws, but they faced those moments together. 6 months after the second wedding, Ava woke feeling different. Not bad different, just different. She'd been tired lately, emotional. Her favorite coffee tasted wrong. Little things that added up to something. She took a test, then another, then a third, just to be sure, all positive. She stared at the little plastic stick, her heart racing. A baby. They were going to have a baby. Fear hit her first. What if she was a terrible mother? What if her past trauma affected her child? What if she couldn't do this? But then, hope, warm and bright and undeniable. A baby, a little person made of her and Ethan. A new beginning in the most literal sense. She told him that night over dinner. "I have something to tell you," she said, her hands shaking. Ethan set down his fork. "Okay, you're scaring me a little. Don't be scared. It's good, I think. I hope." She took a breath. "I'm pregnant." The silence stretched. Ethan stared at her. Then his eyes went wide, then wet. Then he was out of his chair and pulling her into his arms. "Are you sure?" His voice was muffled against her hair. 3 tests worth of sure. He pulled back to look at her face. "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," she confirmed. He laughed. Then he cried. Then he kissed her so hard she forgot to breathe. I can't. We're having a baby. You said that already. I'm going to keep saying it until it feels real." They held each other in the kitchen, swaying slightly, already imagining the future. A nursery, tiny clothes, first steps, first words, a whole life stretching ahead of them. "I'm terrified," Ava admitted. "Me too, but also excited." "Me too." She pulled back to look at him. "You're going to be an amazing father. You're going to be an incredible mother." He rested his forehead against hers. "This child is going to be so loved, so wanted, so cherished, so chosen," Ava whispered. "Always chosen." The pregnancy wasn't easy. Ava was sick for the first 3 months, exhausted for the next 3, uncomfortable for the final 3. But through it all, Ethan was there, holding her hair, rubbing her feet, talking to her belly about everything and nothing. They found out they were having a girl, and they knew immediately what to name her, Hope, because that's what she was, what she represented, what they'd found in each other. The foundation kept growing. Lydia came on as a full-time employee. Mrs. Porter became the unofficial grandmother to every woman who walked through their doors. They moved into a bigger office space, hired counselors and caseworkers, made real, tangible differences in people's lives. And through it all, Ava's belly grew, a visible reminder that life moved forward, that healing was possible, that broken things could become beautiful. Hope arrived on a Tuesday morning in April. 7 pounds, 6 ounces, perfect in every way. Ava held her daughter and cried, not from pain, not from fear, but from overwhelming joy. "She's so small," she whispered. Ethan sat beside the hospital bed, looking at his girls with wonder. "She's perfect. She has your eyes. She has your strength." Hope yawned and made a tiny noise. Both parents melted. Over the next few days, a steady stream of visitors came. Lydia brought balloons and tears of joy. Mrs. Porter brought blankets and advice. Friends from the foundation sent flowers and cards. But the best moment came when they were alone, just the 3 of them. Ethan held Hope while Ava rested, and he sang to her, soft and off-key, a lullaby his grandfather used to sing to him. "You're going to grow up so loved," he told the sleeping baby. "Your mama is the bravest person I know, and she's going to teach you to be brave too. She's going to teach you that scars don't make you broken. They make you a survivor." He kissed Hope's forehead. "And I'm going to make sure you never doubt how wanted you are, how chosen you are, how precious you are." Ava watched from the bed, her heart so full it ached. This was her family, her home, her second chance. And it was perfect. They brought Hope home to the small house with the wild garden, set up the nursery they'd painted together, learned to function on no sleep, figured out how to be parents through trial and error, and a lot of love. The foundation continued. Ava took maternity leave, but she stayed involved, made calls from home, met with donors, mentored women who reminded her of her younger self. One day, a woman came to the office, young, scared, with a fresh bruise on her cheek and terror in her eyes. Ava met with her, held her hand, said, "I know you're scared. I was too, but you're going to be okay. I promise you're going to be okay." The woman looked at Ava's scar. Did someone hurt you too? Yes. And you got out? I got out. I found help. I rebuilt my life. And now I have a daughter and a husband who loves me and work that matters. Ava squeezed her hand. You can have that too. It won't be easy, but it's possible. I'm proof. The woman started to cry. Ava held her while she sobbed, and later they made a plan. Safety first, then shelter, then healing. It was what the foundation did best, what Ava did best, turning pain into purpose, helping others because she'd been helped. On Hope's first birthday, they threw a party in the garden. It was bigger than they'd planned. Friends, co-workers, families from the foundation, people whose lives had been touched by Ethan and Ava's story. Hope toddled around in a little dress, getting frosting everywhere. She had Ethan's green eyes and Ava's warm brown skin, and she was fearless. Absolutely fearless. She's going to be trouble, Lydia said, watching Hope climb on everything. She's going to be strong, Ava corrected. As the party wound down and the sun started to set, Ethan found Ava sitting on their favorite spot, the back porch overlooking the garden. Hey, he said, sitting beside her. Hope was asleep in his arms, worn out from the party. Hey, you okay? Better than okay. Ava leaned against his shoulder. I was just thinking about how far we've come. A year and a half ago, I walked into a chapel wearing a veil, terrified and alone. And now, she gestured at the garden, the sleeping baby, the house full of love. Now I have everything I never thought I'd deserve. You deserve all of it, and more. So do you. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only came from truly knowing someone, from choosing them every day, from building a life together one small moment at a time. Want to know a secret? Ethan said. Always. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that you're real, that we made it through everything and came out the other side. Me too. Ava kissed Hope's head. But we did. We really did. You know what Grandpa would say if he were here. What? I told you so. Ethan smiled. He knew. Somehow he knew that this would work, that we'd find each other, that we'd be okay. Maybe he did. Ava touched her scar. The gesture was unconscious now. Not shame, just acknowledgement. I like to think he's watching, proud of us. I think he is too. As the stars came out and the fireflies began to dance in the garden, they sat together, a family, imperfect, scarred, but whole. Years passed. Hope grew. The foundation expanded. Ava's paintings hung in galleries across the state. Ethan's business thrived, and their love, it deepened, matured, became the foundation on which everything else was built. They bought a bigger house eventually, not as big as the estate had been. They didn't need that, but big enough for their growing family, for the second daughter who came 3 years after Hope, for the office where Ava painted and Ethan worked, for the life they'd built together. But they kept the small house, turned it into the foundation's main office, a place where women could come and find safety, find hope, find proof that broken things could heal. Marcus faded into the background. They heard he'd sold the estate, lost most of the money in bad investments, but they didn't gloat, didn't celebrate his downfall. They just moved on, focused on their own happiness instead of his misery. On their 5th anniversary, Ethan and Ava went back to Edisto Beach, just the two of them. Mrs. Porter watched the girls. They walked on the same beach where they'd stayed after Nathaniel's arrest, ate at the same restaurant, slept in the same motel. Do you ever regret it? Ava asked one evening as they watched the sunset. Giving up the estate, the inheritance, all of it? Ethan pulled her closer. Not even for a second, not even a little bit? Ava, look at our life. Really look at it. He turned her to face him. We have 2 beautiful daughters. Work that matters. Love that's real. I wake up every morning next to you and think I'm the luckiest man alive. He kissed her softly. I'd give up 1,000 estates for this. For you. I love you. I love you too. So much. They stood on the beach as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. And Ava thought about that scared woman who'd walked into a chapel wearing a veil, who'd thought she was broken, unwanted, unworthy of love. That woman was gone. Transformed by love and time and healing into someone strong, someone who knew her worth, someone who'd learned that being chosen wasn't about being perfect, it was about being real. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me, for choosing me, for teaching me that I was worth saving. Ethan held her tighter. You saved yourself, Ava. I just had the honor of loving you while you did it. The story could end there, with the sunset and the beach, and the promise of forever. But really it was just beginning. Because every morning Ethan and Ava woke up and chose each other again. Every day they built their life a little more. Every moment they proved that love could heal what money never could. They taught their daughters to be brave, to stand up for themselves, to see beyond surfaces to the heart underneath. They showed them that scars, physical or emotional, were nothing to be ashamed of. They were proof of survival, proof of strength. The foundation helped hundreds of women, then thousands. It became Ava's legacy, her way of turning pain into purpose, of ensuring that no woman ever felt as alone as she once had. And Ethan? He learned that true wealth had nothing to do with money. It was measured in moments, in laughter around the dinner table, in small hands reaching for his, in the way his wife looked at him every morning like he was her whole world, because he was, just like she was his. On quiet evenings when the girls were asleep and the house was still, they'd sit on the back porch. The garden would be full of fireflies and roses, and they'd talk about everything and nothing, about their days, their dreams, their plans. And sometimes Ava would touch her scar, and Ethan would cover her hand with his, a silent reminder. You survived. You're here. You're loved. She was the bride no one wanted, the woman with scars and trauma and a past full of pain. But she was also the woman Ethan would always need, the woman who'd saved his life twice, the woman who taught him that love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing someone, every single day, in all their messy, complicated, beautiful humanity. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. 10 years later, Hope stood in the Foundation's main office, the little house with the wild garden, and read from a paper for her school project. My mom is a hero, she read aloud to the gathered women. She survived something terrible, but she didn't let it break her. She used it to help other people. She taught me that scars don't make you weak, they make you strong. And she taught me that being chosen every single day by someone who really sees you, that's what love is. In the back of the room, Ava wiped her eyes. Ethan put his arm around her. She gets it, he whispered. She really does. Hope finished her presentation. The women applauded, and Ava thought about the long, winding road that had brought her here, to this moment, to this life. It hadn't been easy. It had been hard and scary and painful, but it had been worth it. Every single step had been worth it, because she wasn't the bride no one wanted anymore. She was the woman everyone needed, the survivor, the helper, the proof that love could heal anything, and she was chosen, every single day, by a man who saw past her scars to the warrior underneath. That was her story, her truth, her happy ending, and it was real.